Welcome back to yet another episode of GraveWalkers Paranormal Conspiracy, UFOs, and True Crime Podcast. I got it right this time, and the only reason I got it right this time is because I wrote it down. I had to write it down because for some reason I forget what I called this podcast, and it's very embarrassing to forget what your own podcast is called. I'm the one that made it. I'm the one that wrote it, and I forget what it's called. It's actually very sad. It's very sad, but it's very hilarious at the same time. But yeah, welcome back, you guys. Episode 3. We made it 3. Episode 3. The good old episode number 3. I think. Yeah. This is episode, I think. The last 2 episodes were really fun to do. I'm having a blast doing these videos, doing these episodes and everything. These are just topics that I'm interested in, stories that I'm interested in, and they're really fun to listen to, but they're also really fun to talk about. But today's episode is something that I don't like hearing about, which is very ironic because I'm doing this episode. I don't like hearing about it. I don't like the idea of it. I don't like that it keeps happening, and I don't like that we sort of allow this to happen. But it's really out of our control that this continues. And well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say it's out of our control. I'm not going to go into the whole control of like gun control and everything. I'm not going to go into that at all whatsoever. But this topic and this particular story is just something that keeps happening and keeps happening over and over again. And let's just get into it. So you clicked on this video, you know what this episode is about. This episode is about the most famous school massacre that took place in America, April 20th, 1999. I'm talking about Columbine. I wanted to do this episode for a long time, and I knew that this episode was going to come up eventually. And I did so much research on this episode. Not this episode, but I did so much research on this particular topic. And I'm not proud of that. It's not like one of those things like, oh, I'm so knowledgeable about this topic, or I'm so knowledgeable about these 2 gentlemen that we're going to be discussing today. I'm not proud of that. I'm not happy about that. You know, it's a dark topic. It's very sad, very distressing. And the deeper you go into it, the more that you learn about this topic, this particular story, event, the more you're just like, doors get opened and everything, and this branches off into this area, and this is like this, and it's like, why did this happen? Why did that happen? And it makes you fear what people can really do, what people are capable of if they if they really put their minds to it. But let's get into it, you guys. This is no notes. I'm not going off of any notes on this one because I've watched so many documentaries on this. I wanted to get mentally prepared for this episode. I wanted to get knowledgeable for this episode, so I'm going no notes on this. So if I jump around and everything, basically, if I jump around, it'll all come together. Keep up. I'll be doing some Googling along the way in case I get lost, which might actually happen. But so first things first, the thing about Columbine is it was and it wasn't a school shooting. It was technically it was considered one, but technically it wasn't supposed to be that. The real motive, the real mission for Columbine was a bombing, and the whole idea was to place bombs in the cafeteria. First of all, we're gonna introduce the two gentlemen that obviously did this, but I don't want to really focus on them too much because I want to focus more on the events themselves. I want to focus on the story itself, and I want to definitely focus on the victims themselves, which is why at the beginning of this video of this episode, I put all the names up and everything who tragically lost their lives that day. And so I want to focus more on them. I will be discussing the two that did this, obviously, because you have to get the bigger picture. But I do want to not focus on them so much, even though they're heavily involved in it, obviously. I want to focus more on the story about it, about what happened afterwards, how Columbine was able to move on from this and everything. But so, yeah, it started out, this was the original plan. The original plan was to start out with a bombing. So the names of the two gentlemen, Eric Harris, Dylan Klebold. This is the first time I've ever mentioned their names. Wow, that feels weird. I've always heard their names being mentioned, but I've never actually said them myself. So 17-year-old Dylan Klebold, 18-year-old Eric Harris were the two gentlemen that did this. And in my last episode, I forgot, or is it the last episode? No, the episode before that, the JFK one. Editing got so in my way, and I forgot to put up photos of things that I was talking about, and I gotta make sure that I put photos in this one because there's so much to unpack. But I will have the photos of the two. We'll put them right here. And so those are the two gentlemen right here. They started off everything as a bombing. So the morning started out Tuesday, April 20th, 1999. Typical day for Littleton, Colorado, which is where Columbine's located. Typical day for Denver, for Colorado, for the U.S. You know, things were happening in different parts of the world. There was a volcano eruption in Alaska or something like that. Things were going on all over the place, and nobody knew that this was going to be the day that is going to steal the news from everybody. Everybody's going to be focused in on what's going on. So it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and Dylan gets up super early before his mom even gets up. And he's already dressed. Everything's ready to go. And she's wondering what's going on. Like, this is way too early for him to be awake. Like, what's going on? And she opens her bedroom door, peeks out from her room, and she can hear him going down the stairs and everything. Heavy footsteps, heavy boots going down the stairs. And she calls his name out. She's like Dylan, are you all right? Because this was super early for him to be awake. And so she calls out and everything and wonder what's going on. And she said later on in some kind of lecture or interview that she was giving that she was like really confused because this was too early for him to be awake. It wasn't that time to wake him up yet. And he walks out the door and just says bye. And that was it. And that was the last time that she ever saw him or heard him. So Eric and Dylan, this is all from memory, you guys. This is a memory of like all the research that I've done. And like I said, I'm not proud of that. You know, it's like, oh, I did my homework. Yeah, I did my homework. So Eric and Dylan meet up and they go to the bowling alley because they have this, I don't know what this is. It's like a 0-hour bowling thing or something. If anybody knows what that is, I don't know. Maybe it's like a bowling team or something like that, but you have like a 0-hour bowling team. But it's considered a class, but it's like a class before you go to school, I guess. I don't know. Maybe for like people who are in tennis or something, or yearbook committee chess team or something, you have that 0-hour class thing before you go to school. I have no idea. So I don't know what 0-hour means. But they go to the bowling alley, and I forget what it's called. They go to the bowling alley and they're talking with a bunch of friends outside. They never go inside the bowling alley because they have like, it's a 0-hour class bowling team thing. They never go inside. And that was a bit strange as well, because why would you go to the bowling alley, not do your 0-hour class, and just meeting with friends outside? And there's a lot of conspiracy about that they were just saying their goodbyes to their friends or something because they knew what was about to occur. Obviously, everybody else didn't. So what do? You go and say goodbye to your friends or something before this action takes place, which is very sad. So they go to I'll move this over here. There we go. So they go to the bowling alley, meet up and everything, all the friends and all this. And afterwards, they go to a convenience store, some kind of shop, like a gas station, sort of. Like a gas station. And they start buying propane tanks, which they've already previously can't even talk. They already previously bought, I think they had 7 propane tanks. I could be wrong about that. It was like 6 or 7. These guys were insane. They already had like 3 propane tanks, but they wanted more. And so they go to the convenience store, get the propane tanks. Dylan goes to fill up on gasoline for his car. Eric goes and buys the propane tanks. And then he goes to a separate location where he buys more propane tanks. And this is all caught on surveillance. This is all caught on camera. And it was the only time that he was captured on camera before that event. So everything gets ready. This is all in a span of like 6 hours. This is all in a span of 6 hours. So they had 6 hours until this event takes place, which has to be the longest 6 hours ever, because you know what you're about to do. You know what's about to take place. So this has got to be the longest 6 hours of your life. But anyways, so they meet up after they get ready, get the propane tanks. Dylan gets gas, all this. And they actually meet up to have breakfast. Now that one was like, when I heard that, I was like, ugh. When these kind of stories come up, when you listen to these kind of crime stories and everything, and another episode that I will be doing later on involves eating after committing a crime too. It's like, how are you able to eat something and then know that you're about to do this? Or how are you able to do something like that and have an appetite afterwards? And that's what I thought mostly. Is like, I don't know. I don't understand the minds of these people, so I can't really vouch for what they do in their own brain. But anyways, so they get breakfast, and this was about 10 something in the morning. They get breakfast and all this, and they go their separate ways. So I think I might have messed up. They have breakfast first, then they go their separate ways. Dylan gets gas. Eric gets the tanks and everything. And then they meet back up at Eric's house. Right. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I told you there's going to be a bunch of bouncing around because this is no notes. So there's going to be a bunch of jumping, and you're just going to have to keep up. So they get breakfast, go their separate ways, and then they meet back up at Eric's house. Okay, I got it. I got it. So over at Eric's place, they get the firearms ready. They get everything ready that they need to get ready. And they start filming a video. Now, these videos that they were filming were called the basement tapes. At the time, I don't know if they were still called the basement tapes or if they were called something else, but somebody named them the basement tapes. You cannot find these tapes anymore because they got destroyed, I believe, or they're confidential, of course. But the transcript for these tapes are available. And you can read through the entire transcript of the tapes and everything. It's just talking about them, what they plan on doing, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about the world, how they feel about everything. These guys were completely lost. I will say that. They were very confused and lost young men. They really were, which is sad. So they go back to Eric's house and make the final video, the final tape, and they apologize to their families, they apologize to their parents, they tell their friends that they can have whatever they want from their house and all this. They knew what was going to happen in the end. They already planned this. They knew that it was going to end the way that they wanted it to end, and it wasn't going to end the world's way. So they were fully prepared for that. So they apologize to their parents. They say, this isn't your fault. They talk to their friends. They say their friends, there's nothing that you can do about this. Nothing that you did could stop this. Nothing you did created this and all of that and whatever. So the video ends and they take separate cars and they drive to Columbine. Everything's all set up, ready to go. Drive to Columbine. Now, this was something that got brought up in a documentary that I was listening to. Very good documentary. All these documentaries are very great. And very detailed with the information. Very detailed with how the events played out. So this is where I'm getting my information from. And I'm just like remembering it. Like the memory is locked in place. So they drive to Columbine. Now, I don't remember who parks where exactly. One of them parked on the western entrance. One of them parked on the, I'm going to get this wrong. One of them was on the western entrance. One of them was on the southern entrance. Yeah, I'm going to get this wrong. Something like that. They parked in separate locations. One of them parked in the senior parking lot. The other one parked in the teacher parking lot, I think, or something. I know it was for sure the west side of the school. So yeah, west side. Anyways, so they park different areas, took separate cars, and they go inside the school. And right now at this moment was a lunch. And the cafeteria had about 455 people in the cafeteria at that exact moment. So they go in, and this is where it gets a little controversial, because there's a thing that was mentioned in the documentary that I'm referring to. There's a thing that says that the security surveillance tapes were switched for some reason or changed or something. I don't know. This is 1999. They still had VHS tapes. So you had to like switch the VHS tape out for a new one so you can watch that one or something. I imagine this wasn't always, Bluetooth surveillance ring cameras, So I'm assuming what ended up happening was they had to switch the tapes out, put a new tape in there that can record the rest of the school day, and then they have the other tape in it. That's just pure assumption. But anyways, it was said that the tape got switched out for a new one, and just at the time when that tape got switched out, that was when Dylan and Eric assembled their propane tank concoctions in the cafeteria. They brought in like the duffel bags. They brought in all of this equipment and everything, and strategically placed it around the cafeteria because that was part of their plan. And one piece of footage that got released, this is all public information. One piece of footage that got released is it's really grainy, it's really like fuzzy, but a piece of information that got released is you can see both of them walking around the cafeteria. They have the duffel bags in their hands, and this is a school cafeteria. Everybody has a backpack on them. Everybody has a book bag. So I don't know if they were in actual like duffel bags or if they were just like strung up backpacks or something. You can't even see it on camera, but I have a backpack over there. If it was just like a regular backpack, I don't know if it was an actual duffel bag. I haven't seen the photos of it, but anyways. So there is footage of them strategically placing those around the cafeteria, but the tapes got changed. I'm not going to say switched because that sounds like it's a cover up. I'm going to say changed. Like I said, if you record, anybody who remembers those days, like me, if you record so much on a VHS tape, you have to change it out, put a new tape in there, hit record, you're good to go. Kind of like a cassette tape, which I imagine would be the same thing for surveillance cameras. I'd have to see what kind of cameras they had. Because I don't know what kind of cameras would be used for surveillance in 1999. So I don't know. Irrelevant, but so you do actually see them on camera placing the duffel bags around the cafeteria. Is, like I said, it's really grainy and hazy and all of this because it's 1999. They don't have the same technology that we do, obviously. But anyways, bags are all placed around the cafeteria, and they are set to go off at noon, 12 o'clock. But I heard different things. My ear is really itching. I heard different things that it was that that those were supposed to go off at 11 on top of the hour, 11. But they also had their cars rigged up as well that were supposed to go off at noon. Exactly. Whoops. Hey, what did I do? I hit the thing. Exactly at noon. So I heard different things. I don't know if they were supposed to go off at noon, if they were supposed to go off at 11. Either way, the cafeteria was filled to capacity. 455 students filled. So duffel bags are placed. The two go outside. They go up to this one park that's nearby the high school, which I forget the park's name. I didn't think about that because that comes up later on too. They go up to the park and start getting everything ready. Start loading up. Everything's about to start. So now this is where I need to launch my Google because I'm going to start using names and everything, and I don't remember who got hit first. Uno momento. Give me 1 second. I thought I had this
I thought I had the names ready and everything, but I guess I don't. Hold on. Fast name of goth culture. Get out of here. Well, anyways, I'm gonna keep talking while. Whoa. Yeah, thanks History Channel for showing a giant picture of Marilyn Monroe. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I had to remember the names and everything. I'm sorry. So they go to the park, which is really close to the school, and there were 3 people who were outside the school, and they were like talking, shooting whatever. And I'm gonna see if I can try and find it, because brief history, yeah, that's like a whole thing, dude. I gotta find it because it's very important. It's very important who got hit first. Let's see here. I am so sorry, you guys. I need to find where. I need to find something. Because I'm trying to find the first people. There were three people who got hit first. They were outside. Okay. Yeah, Lance Kirkland was the first one. I'm trying to find it. I will definitely get this figured out. Because there were 3 students who saw them coming down the hill, like with the library entrance is right here, or like, yeah, the library was like up here, the cafeteria was right there. They were off this direction, and there were 3 students who came down from the north going south. So they were facing north. And I'm trying to find who. Britannica might have it. Let's see here. If I. I might have to edit this part out because I can't find it. Hold on. I'm gonna pause the recording and try and find it here, because I need to look this up and figure out the names and everything. So when we come back, I'm gonna cut back to the new scene here. Okay, so give me 1 second. Okay, I'm back. So I had to do a lot of note taking and everything because there was just so much information that comes out about it. But I think I have it all sort of planned out. Sort of. I had to do a lot of research. I rewatched the documentaries that I was referring to, because they're the ones that I got my information from. So I'm back. That was a long pause, but I'm gonna edit that so that it like whatever. So, fuck, where was I? The beginning. Okay. So it was. So they come from the north side. So the library is right here, and I'll put a map of it right there, and I'll make sure it's there. So they come from the north. The library, the cafeteria faces west. So there's an entrance to the cafeteria, to the library. The library is on the second floor. And then there's like double doors or something that go into the west entrance. Dylan and Eric were on the north side, and it was 3 students, Daniel Rohrbough, Lance Kirkland, and Sean Graves, were all south of them. They were within a proximity of like, what was it, 20 feet? Something like that. So pretty close. So Dan Rohrbough gets hit first, I believe. He goes down. Lance Kirkland gets hit. Or Lance Kirkland gets hit. Dan Rohrbough tries to save him. But upon saving him, he gets killed as well. Obviously, rest in peace, Dan Rohrbough. And Sean Graves gets hit. He mentioned something about he had a backpack on. The bullet went through his backpack, spun around, hit him in the hip area, and he was paralyzed, instantly down. He was right outside the cafeteria door. Lance Kirkland is down, and Daniel Rohrbough is already gone, sadly, unfortunately. And so Sean makes his way to the cafeteria in the doorway. He's paralyzed, can't walk, makes his way down that way. And that's when people are starting to kind of realize that something is going on outside. They think it's a prank because this is something that is unheard of in this time period. It's not uncommon, but it was something that was definitely unheard of. So Sean is laying in the cafeteria doorway, and people are like looking at him scared because he had a scared look on his face too. You can't blame him at all, obviously. And so everybody's all freaked out and they're wondering what's going on. Fire alarms going off, a bunch of chaos. And so those go off, and that starts happening. There's 2 more students that were sitting outside for lunch. They were just enjoying the day, and that's Richard Castaldo and Rachel Scott. Rest in peace, Rachel. You were definitely not forgotten at all. None of these people are forgotten at all. I want to make that very, very clear that we want to keep the memory of, here at GraveWalkers, we want to keep the memory of everybody involved in this event, in this situation. I never met them at all personally because I was only 4. Never met them personally, but I listened to all their stories. I listened to their families and everything. So all of you, everybody that was taken by this event, you are not forgotten. There are people who listen to these documentaries, who listen to these tragedies and everything, and your name continues. I've heard Rachel's story. You can go to her website. I might put the website on the bottom. But ouch, I hit the thing again. Yeah, I heard Rachel's story, how she was and everything. And yeah, you are not forgotten at all. But Richard Castaldo and Rachel Scott were sitting outside for lunch. Richard was a new student, came from a Catholic school. And Rachel, from what I gather, she was that type of girl who would probably make everybody feel welcome. And she would make everybody feel like they're meant to be there, you know. She sounds like a very kind-hearted person. All of these people are kind-hearted people, you know. I'm not taking that away from anybody. All these people are kind-hearted people. They did not deserve this at all, you know. So, but I feel like Rachel was that kind of kind-hearted person, taking in this person who got moved from a Catholic school to Columbine High School and everything, and wanted to be a part of Columbine, you know. And so those two are the first ones that get shot at. Unfortunately, Rachel lost her life on that one. She got hit in the temple, something like that. This whole thing was just, it was all over the place. All over the place. So those two are shot and killed first. Well, who was it? Richard lived. He actually like heard Rachel's final moments and everything, and that's very upsetting. So rest in peace, Rachel. Rest in peace. So Lance Kirkland got shot in the chest, I believe. I'm gonna get these all wrong, but he got shot. And Dylan walks over to him, and Dylan and Eric walk over to them because they start like firing into the library and all of this. They start firing into the library and all this, and Dylan walks over to Lance, and Lance is on the ground and everything with the gunshots and whatnot. And I don't know how he survived this, to be honest. I have no idea. But Dylan walks up to him, looks down, sees Lance, and the only thing that he says is like, "Oh, sorry, dude." And he shoots him point blank in the face. Right here. Like, boom. Like, his face was gone. It was missing. They had to basically like, what is it called? Skin graft it back on. Like, he's a trooper for surviving that. Like, that in itself, like, sheesh. So gunfire starts going on. And I'm just gonna give you guys a heads up right now. My camera is on, what is it, 10%? 7%, so I might actually lose footage, but you'll still hear my voice. Actually, I'm gonna cut the footage right now, so the rest of it's gonna be like my voice and everything, because I have like 7% left on my camera here, so I don't want it to just die and then lose that. So queuing only audio for the remainder of this episode. So okay, we are on audio only. Audio only. Okay. So now I can make goofs and everything, and you guys won't know it because I'm on audio only. I'm just kidding. So they entered the library roughly at 11:30 in the morning. Is when this all took place. It's about lunchtime. Oh, roll messages. Okay. So they entered the library roughly at 11:30. There's estimated 50 people in this library, big library. And they start shouting for people to get up out of the tables and everything. And they're shouting and all this. Before this happened, there was a teacher who actually saw them shooting outside, saw them, heard everything going on. She heard the gunshots. No one knew what this was. They thought it was a prank. Like I said, this was a time period when people didn't know this stuff. They didn't know what was going on. They thought it was a prank. And she saw it firsthand. And she runs inside the library, dials 911 from the landline. And she was on 911 for a long time. And throughout this entire 911 call, throughout the audio and everything, you can hear the gunshots in the background. You can hear frantic students. You can hear all of this going on. And so they come into the library and they start shouting for everybody to get up, like everybody out of the desks, everybody out of the tables and everything. And for some reason, they just had this thing against sporty people. I guess sporty people, they received the most backlash or the most bullying from sporty people and jocks and all this and whatnot. So they had a problem with sporty people. So they come in, start firing their guns and everything. And I'm not going to go into extreme full detail of what happened. If you want full detail, there's plenty of information out there that you can look up and everything. But I'm going to give you like a brief gist of it, like a brief breakdown of it. So they enter the library, shots going off, Molotov cocktails going off, pipe bombs blowing up. This is just an insane event. Nobody obviously was prepared for this. Nobody knew what was going on. Just an insane event. And Craig Scott, who is the sister, who is the brother of Rachel Scott. I didn't know what I was saying at that point. I tried saying something else, but my brain decided to say something else instead. Craig Scott, the brother of Rachel, was in the library with two of his friends, Matthew Kechter and Isaiah Shoels. And they can hear everything going off. They can hear the pipe bombs blowing up. They can hear the gunshots going off. And they're just like, it's close to the end of the year. It's April 20th. School's out in maybe another month or so. It's close to graduation. This has got to be a senior prank. It's that time of year for the senior prank and all this. And they were like, whatever. So once everything leads up to that, they enter the library, shots are ringing out, glass is shattering, all of this. Teacher runs in, calls 911, and they're like, okay, something is wrong. Something's going on. So Craig, Matt, and Isaiah all hide under a table. And like I said, I'm not going to give you the brief what happened. I'm not going to give you like full timeline events of what occurred because there's just so much to unpack. But shots are going off, desks or tables are exploding and all of this. Eventually, Dylan comes over after so many explosions and stuff going on. Dylan comes over to where Craig, Matt, and Isaiah are. And Isaiah was one of the very few African American students in the school. And Dylan notices him right away and calls Eric over, calls him a racial slur, calls to Eric over. He's like, "Oh, hey, we got one over here." Shoots him instantly. I guess they tried pulling him out or something, and he fought back or something like that, which is very upsetting. And all he wanted was to see his mom. Like, that's very upsetting. So rest in peace to Isaiah Shoels and Matthew Kechter. And at that point in time, all Craig could do, or wanted to do really, was to not draw attention to himself. So he basically laid in his friend's blood, pretty much. Wiped it on himself and was like, "Okay, like I'm dead. Don't drop attention to me. Don't drop whatever to me." Before that, before this kind of happened, I kind of jumped around a little bit. My bad. Before this kind of happened, the first person that was actually killed in the library was Kyle Velasquez. Rest in peace, Kyle Velasquez. I'm going to say this to every name that I talk about, just out of respect, just because. But rest in peace, Kyle Velasquez, of course. He, from what I saw, he was mentally disabled. He I guess had Down syndrome of some kind, but he didn't know that he was supposed to hide. He didn't know what was going on. Obviously, nobody knew what was going on, and he basically liked simple things. Anybody who's dealt with people who have Down syndrome or something, autism or whatever, just liked simple things. He was a very simple human being, and it's very upsetting. It really is. But he was fatally shot first before Matt and Isaiah and all this. So strategically, I guess if you want to say strategically, they would go around and they would start shooting at desks and tables and everything because everybody was underneath a table. Sorry. Sorry, guys. So they were underneath a table and everything, and they would just start shooting their guns off at random tables. Stephen Cornell was one of the victims. He was shot in the neck fatally. Rest in peace, Stephen. And they would just go all throughout the library. There was a point where it was classified as a game to these two. Like, they would go around and there was a lot of laughing and joking and all of this. It's like, it was considered a game to these guys. They would go under a table to where Cassie Bernall, rest in peace, Cassie, Eric would kneel down. He would say things like peekaboo, and then shot and killed Cassie. Like, that is just a mental image that's like, obviously you never experienced that, but that is just a mental, it's just a mental image that you can just only imagine. Like, looking at their faces of the two guys, looking at their faces, and just seeing the other videos of them, just the anger and the monstrosity in their face. And having put yourself in that situation, like mentally in that situation, you have this going on at your school, you have this going on, you have no idea what's going on, you think it's a prank of some kind, and all of a sudden, like, they bend down and they're like, oh, peekaboo, bam. It's like, that's the last thing that you see. Like, that's gotta be, I can't even imagine that. Like, I can't even begin to fathom. I can't even begin to put my mind at that. But because of that, and I think this is actually absolutely okay. This is going to sound horrible, but I think this is absolutely hilarious. What happened to Eric? I think he deserved it. After killing Cassie, I believe the recoil from his shotgun actually broke his nose, and it broke it so bad that it caused his nose to bleed profusely. And the first time that I heard that, I was like, I thought it was actually really funny that he broke his nose. I think he deserved it. I think I have no sympathy when it comes to that, and I just think he deserved it. So, anyways, so while this was going on, Dylan would move around to a table, and he had a Tech 9, kills Lauren Townsend. Rest in peace, Lauren. And throughout this whole chaos, Jon Tomlin tried to move out of the table, but he got shot, and then he was repeatedly like kicked and harassed by Dylan, got shot again by Dylan fatally. Rest in peace, Jon Tomlin. And Kelly Fleming, and all these names are listed at the beginning of this episode. Kelly Fleming was hiding behind a table. She unfortunately was not underneath the table. And because of this error, she was shot and killed. So rest in peace, Kelly Fleming. The thing is, it's weird about this is I failed to mention one thing because I'm coming to another here. But I'm going to mention this first and then I'll go back to that. There was a guy named John Savage who actually knew both of them, I guess. And there was a conversation that took place between the two. And he was like, what? He talked to Dylan, I guess. And he was like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you doing? And Dylan's like, oh, I'm just killing people. It's like, geez, like, just killing people, you know, whatever. Like, oh, okay. Wow. And so I guess John knew them. He's like, are you gonna kill me? Like, you don't have to do this. And they were like, you know, nah, you're good. And he was actually told that he can leave the library after all this chaos. And obviously, what did John do? He got out immediately. I can only imagine just being able to run out of that library after everything that took place, being able to run out of the library and knowing what you witnessed, knowing what you saw, and you're able to go. Like, that to me is wild. That is wild. Now, backtracking, there was a man by the name of Brooks Brown, who was actually friends with Dylan forever. and had beef with Eric for a while because of some windshield fiasco. And they were not friends anymore for a couple of years until eventually they made amends. They weren't really friends after that, after like making their peace or something. But before all this began, Brooks actually found Dylan and Eric outside of the school. And he was like, dude, Eric, like we have a major test today. Like, what are you doing? And Eric was like, you know what, dude, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. So he basically told Brooks to leave. He's like, I like you now. Leave, go away, whatever. And Brooks actually left. The big conspiracy about this is they were just about to do this. He had beef with Brooks, let him go. And there's two sides of the coin here. One side is the reason why he let him go is because he made amends with him, made their peace, everything was cool. I like you now. I don't want any problems, blah, 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 blah. The opposite side is the reason why he let Brooks go is because if he would have done something to Brooks outside of the school right then and there, it would have destroyed their entire plan. It would have destroyed everything. And that's not what Eric wanted. He didn't want the plan to be destroyed. Which is not sympathetic, but it's more sick and twisted than you think, really. Because he didn't want the event to not happen, but he didn't want it seems like he was on the fence. Like, you're my friend now. I don't want to hurt you. But at the same time, I want this event to happen. I don't want this event not to happen. So, and that's kind of weird for me too, because I'll get to something else after this. One of the second to last people that I got fatally shot was Daniel Mauser. Rest in peace, Daniel Mauser. He was grazed in the ear when they were like shooting at the tables and whatnot and desks and everything. And he actually fought back. I think he had glasses on or something. He was called Four Eyes or whatever. He actually fought back by pushing a chair towards Eric. He got shot in the hand first, I believe, and wrestled with Eric, pushed a chair towards him. Eric shot him point blank, gone. And it's just, it's a ferocious way to go. It's an insanely cruel way to go. This whole thing is insanely cruel. But finally, the two move south, the southern part of the library, and hail of gunfire. Everything starts going off again, and Corey DePooter is shot and killed. Obviously, rest in peace, Corey. Rest in peace, all of these people. And that's really when the library massacre ends. The most action takes place in the library because they make their way down into school and all this. They're throwing bombs and all that and whatever, all this stupid stuff. And then the library is the biggest part of it. And no, I don't want to say my notes. Okay. And that's basically the biggest part of it is the library section. So they leave the library and go off to the cafeteria to go check on their bombs that were supposed to detonate. They didn't go off. Thank God they did not go off, because this is what would have happened had those bombs gone off. Had those bombs gone off, they would have been powerful enough, and I heard about this, they would have been powerful enough to not only destroy 500 people, but the blast would have been so strong that it would have taken the library down from the second floor to the first floor, had they been made right and had they gone off right. And I was like, whoa, like that is wild. That is wild. They have an entire bomb that, well, it was a series of bombs to go off so much that you take down one whole floor. Like the library would drop to the cafeteria, and that would have just been total devastation. So they said it was because of their incompetence. It was because of their not knowledge on how to do this. But I think it was God. I think God played a major role in that. And thank God those didn't go off, you know. And so they make their way out of the library. They go towards the cafeteria and they're blowing up the canisters and everything. And we didn't forget about Sean Graves. Sean was still in the cafeteria doorway where he originally was. And he could hear all the bombs going off. He could, or the gunfire going off. He can hear the smoke alarms and fire alarms and everything. And he hears them like getting closer and closer and all this. And eventually, I believe he gets dragged away by ambulance or law enforcement or whatever. Gets into the ambulance. I think he's the one. Yeah, I think he was the one that said that. Gets put in the ambulance. They make their way back to the library. Oh, I'm jumping around. Yeah, that's fine. Makes their way back to the library. He gets into the ambulance as soon as first responders get there. And he had said that this is the one thing that he'll take away from this is as the ambulance was pulling away to get him to the hospital, he would hear the pinging on top of the ambulance of them shooting at the ambulance. And it's like, oh my God. Like, that is just wild. They're in the ambulance pulling away from the school, trying to get to the hospital and everything, and they're still firing at them. Like, let that sink in for a second. You almost just died in the cafeteria doorway and you barely escape, make it out, get into the ambulance. Everything is cool. Everything is supposed to be, you're with the first responders, and the people who are trying to kill you are still trying to kill you when you're in the ambulance. Just think about that. Ugh, man. Anyways, so Craig Scott is still alive. He is pretending to be dead in his friend's blood pool. And Dylan and Eric go down to the cafeteria and everything, so they're away from the library. And this is an act of heroism, or heroic, if you want to call it. While those two were gone, there were still a lot of survivors in the library, injured, but still surviving. And Craig was like, okay, we got to go. Like, let's get out of the library. Let's get out of here. The guys are gone. Let's go. They all flee the library. And make it out the library doors and everything, and they run out, meet law enforcement, hide behind the cars. They're safe. Dylan and Eric come back to the library, and it's like, when you hear this story, when you hear that they actually fled the library, you're like, yes, like they got out of the library, you know. It's like, wow, to think that they came back to the library and the only people that were left were obviously the deceased, because they can't get out, and anybody who was like severely injured, they can't get out either. And Dylan and Eric go back to the library, and they start opening fire on first responders, law enforcement, all of this. And eventually the happiness, the fun starts to die away, and they realize that, we're going to do this our way. We're going to do this in a way that we want it. So at, I think it was 12:20, 12:15, 12:20, something like that. Dylan and Eric take their own lives. They commit suicide right in the library. And I've seen the photos. I'm not putting the photo up on this episode. If you want to see the photo, you can Google it yourself. It's not too bad, but it's not great either. But they basically take the event in their own hands and basically commit suicide in the library. And they got out. They took the easy route out. But everybody else had to deal with what they did afterwards. They didn't. They took themselves out of the equation. And basically, everybody afterwards, they had to deal with that for the rest of their lives. And, my stomach is growling. I don't know if I got caught on the microphone, but my stomach is growling. So the reason why this event is so, I don't want to say popular. Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, it's a dumb choice of words. The reason why this event is so popular, sort of, and it comes up a lot, is what I said at the beginning of this episode, is this was not meant to be a school shooting. It was meant to be a bombing, because they wanted to bomb the school. Anybody who was left remaining, they would have finished off, which is gross. And yeah, it was just, I don't know what to say. Learning about this event, you get stuck with this event, and you get stuck with like the aftermath of it. You see the faces of the students and everything, and you're just like, you lost your life so early in such a tragic way. And none of them deserved it at all. And it was just a sick and twisted idea of somebody else. And it was a sick and twisted mindset of somebody else's failed idea of themselves, their failed brain of themselves. And yeah, it's just an event that lives on in history. And what's truly fascinating is people who were affected by this. There were some that actually became teachers at Columbine, and I think that that's amazing. You know, you can come back to Columbine so many years later and become a teacher. And I imagine that they get asked questions, you know. It's like, weren't you there when that happened? Yeah, yeah, I was. It's like that's gotta be that shows a lot of courage, a lot of strength, a lot of uh mentality, you know. And the principal, uh what's really upsetting, really sad, the principal witnessed the shooting as well, and he was out in the hallway when it happened, trying to urge students away from it and everything. After this took place, he had to listen. He did like 6 hours of listening to different fire alarms because people would freak out listening to the fire alarms that played that day. So he had to listen to thousands of different fire alarms because it could not sound the same as April 20th. And that's crazy. That is crazy. I think they changed the lunch menu too. They had to change the lunch menu because people remembered that they were having God, I think it was Chinese food or something. They were having some specific food on April 20th, and they had to change the lunch menu because it was the same as the lunch menu on April 20th. And it's like, wow. But they're still Columbine strong. They're still, it's been, it's 2024. April 20th, 2025 will be 6 years. Wow, geez, 26 years. My God, too much research. Too much research, too much, whatever you want to call it. But it's been 26 years next year. And it's yeah, seeing the faces, listening to the stories, listening to the families and everything. It's like you feel like in some strange way, you feel like you know them. You feel like you I feel like looking at people like Rachel Scott, um Lance Kirkland, all these people, looking at them, you know, you kind of feel like, would I have been friends with them? Would I have sat down to lunch with Craig Scott? You know, would I have joined them in the in the cafeteria or whatnot? And it's like you put yourself in that situation, you put yourself in that mindset. Like, would I have been friends with them? You know, and I think I would have. I honestly think I do. But looking at this case, looking at the story, mental illness is a real thing. It is a very real thing. Mental health problems. It's such a real thing. And the way these two viewed themselves, the way these two viewed society, viewed the world, it was not right. It wasn't right. But they wanted to be remembered for something big. They wanted to be remembered for something massive and major. And they did that in such a horrific way.
Like if I could go back in time, I've always thought this. If I can go back in time, I would go to before it started and put a stop to it, you know? And it's just like, you know, it's crazy. So what I want to do really quick is I want to give a moment of silence. We're going to do a moment of silence on this podcast, on this episode, for all the victims that lost their lives that day. So right now, we are going to just give a brief moment of silence here. All right. So that's going to be it for this episode. I want to thank you guys so much if you made it this far. If you listened to the entire episode, I am so sorry that my camera went out. The battery died on it, unfortunately. It was on 70%, but then I took a long time doing some research in between then, so my bad. But yeah, this was an episode that I really wanted to get out, and I do have, in case you guys are wondering, I do have 2 more episodes coming out that involve school events. So, unfortunately. But that's all I'm going to be doing for today, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to GraveWalkers, Paranormal, Conspiracies, UFOs, and True Crime Podcast. Tune in next week for an all-new episode number 4. And episode number 4 is going to be pretty fun. We're going to be diving into some paranormal, because we've already done like conspiracy and true crime and everything. So we need to do some paranormal. So next week's episode, we are diving into the paranormal. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And I am signing off.